It's Friday, time to check in with my sister on our segment Florida Report.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.
Miranda, hello. Happy New Year to you.
Hello.
New Year, Ron DeSantis is sworn in as the governor of Florida for a second time. I think the question is, how long is he going to stay? And there were some, I think, interesting takeaways from the speech that he gave.
Yeah, his inauguration came on Tuesday and it was a packed room. We talked about the VIP seats and stuff a few weeks back. Seems he was able to get a few people to donate some money to fill that space up. But he did an inaugural speech. It was about almost 20 minutes long, and a lot of the speech was geared towards a lot of national issues rather than local Florida issues, which probably is a pretty good gives us a pretty good idea that he's going to announce a presidential bid at some point in the near future. And then he also talked a little bit about some of the how Florida is the place where woke goes to die. And I think when he says that, he means a lot of his kind of fights against certain things like the parental acts and the education freedoms and things like that he's been dealing with all year in regards to like critical race theory and transgender, support within schools and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's a favorite line of his. Let's play a little clip of Ron DeSantis's second inaugural address for the governorship.
Freedom lives here in our great sunshine state of Florida. It lives in the courage of those who patrol the streets and who keep our communities safe. It lives in the industry of those who work long hours to earn a living and raise their families. It lives in the dedication of those who teach our children. It lives in the determination of those who grow our food. It lives in the wisdom of our senior citizens. It lives in the dreams of the historic number of families who have moved from states across this country because they saw Florida as the land of liberty and the land of sanity. Over the past few years, as so many states in our country grinded their citizens down, we in Florida lifted our people up.
He's actually a pretty compelling speaker. I mean, he's a good speaker. I don't know who his speechwriter is, but I like the way that they write his speech. Maybe that's because I'm like a speech nerd. But yeah, you were mentioning, we talked on the show, on the segment a few months ago, how Florida lawmakers are trying to tweak the law so that if he runs for president, he doesn't have to resign as governor. And so maybe that's what he's waiting for.
I can only assume that that's what he's waiting for, because I mean, we're getting into the beginning of what's going to be probably a pretty busy election advertising year. So I can't imagine he's going to want to wait too much longer if he does plan to announce a presidential bid, but he does have to wait for them to make that change, maybe not just for him, but just to the state legislature, that he's able to announce a run and still serve the state of Florida while he campaigns to become president. It'll be interesting to see if they're able to make that work for him and just for any future sitting governors that would like to, put a bid in for a presidential run.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I'm kind of torn on that. I don't necessarily have an issue with it, but I know when our governor Jay Inslee ran, he was gone a lot. And so I think you really have to be honest with yourself about, can I do both? Can I campaign for president, especially like the length of our campaign seasons for president in the U.S.? It's like a year and a half. Can I campaign for president? Can I still effectively serve the people of my state? So he'll have to make that decision. Meanwhile, a lot of talk about what's happening on the southern border, but Florida's like its own border crisis. You guys had an influx of Cuban migrants trying to make the trek via water.
Yeah, this is something that happens all year round, but just over this weekend alone, Key West, and if anybody's ever been to Key West or takes a second to look at it on a map, it's little. It is a little tiny blip in the ocean, pretty far out. It's only about 100 miles from Cuba, so that's usually where they make first landfall if they're lucky enough to get there and not catch the current all the way up to Miami. But just over the weekend, they received over 600 migrants in Key West, and that is a huge stretch on the resources that they have down there for this kind of stuff. This is, they said, more than they've ever seen in one weekend period. And so they were busing them out. I'm not sure where they go. I just looked around trying to find out where they take them from here. We do happen to have some areas in the southern part of the state and the northern part of the state where we keep people who come into this country illegally, but they were busing them out, and they're actually leaving some of their boats, behind on people's properties, which a lot of homeowners were not too happy about either. So it's a lot. It's a lot for a small area like the Florida Keys to handle that many migrants coming in.
Yeah, I mean, people were livid about 50 in Martha's Vineyard. Obviously, I've been to Key West with you. It's pretty fun. I was there for my 30th, and I'm not going to say a lot, but there was a lot of tequila involved. So I have to imagine that's a very interesting place for migrants to first come upon in the United States. But people were losing it over 50 migrants in Martha's Vineyard. I mean, 500 or more in Key West is a lot. And quickly on the boat thing. So obviously these aren't nice boats that they're leaving behind. These are like derelict vessels. And the government is telling homeowners, like, you're on your own to figure out what to do with them.
Yeah, so they're not getting any immediate answers at all from like local and state government about what's going to happen with some of these vessels. And we're talking like dozens of boats, not just like one boat on one guy's property, like a lot of makeshift rafts and vessels. And I've even seen ones that are just giant pieces of styrofoam strapped together with like a troll motor on the back. So they can get pretty scary, pretty dangerous. One homeowner says that it's leaking gasoline all over their private beach and into the water. And they've been told that if they want them gone, they're going to have to call a company to tow them away. So it's probably uncharted territory about whose actual responsibility that is. But I would assume that it would fall on the government. But I don't know.
Well, it's a similar type of issue at the southern border where you have these private landowners and their land has been just littered with trash and, clothing and paperwork and all sorts of things. And they are just left to deal with it on their own. One more thing, Miranda, we told people on the segment last week, does everyone in Florida not listen to the podcast? I thought every resident of Florida did.
They might need to. And if not the podcast, at least watch the news a little bit, because they didn't listen.
They didn't listen. We told them not to shoot guns into the air to celebrate the new year. Obviously, people did, and some woman caught a 9mm in the head. She's okay.
Yeah, she's okay. She's alive. I mean, I'm assuming a lot of that force comes out of those bullets when it goes way up in the air and then finds its way back down via gravity. But she was at a friend's house celebrating the new year, and they were all outside watching the fireworks and just carrying on as normal people do when they're celebrating the new year. And she suddenly just got hit in the face right by her eye with what she described as like a metal softball is what it felt like to her. And so they really didn't know what had happened to her. And by the time that she got to the hospital, they pulled the slug out of her face, and they were all like, this was a celebratory bullet that you got hit with. So they are looking to see if at all they can figure out where that bullet came from, if anybody in the neighborhood was celebrating exactly how they were not supposed to be. And I'm assuming they're going to face felony charges for that. So.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the same as shooting someone. So I don't know what the consequence would be, but it's assault with a deadly weapon. So, well, I'm glad she's okay. And for the record, it was not her or her friends who shot into the air.
No, they were celebrating very much as you were supposed to and just enjoying the fireworks and not shooting off guns. So she's an innocent bystander, and so were all her friends and family whose night got ruined because somebody decided they wanted to shoot guns into the air to celebrate the new year.
Crazy. Very Florida. All right, Miranda, thank you so much.
You're welcome. Have a good week.
It's not even controversial anymore.
People know in Florida their freedoms are going to be respected.